Yo, Little Lolo coming back down to earth here, and Nintendo might be the most gluttonous, money-hungry company in the gaming world. They are undoubtedly the Mr. Krabs of gaming, and it's not even close. The amount of shit that die-hard Nintendo fans have been putting up with for the last decade and a half is baffling. It's like they're stuck in a manipulative relationship, constantly fixated on the old days where nostalgia dictates their logic and reasoning. You know, like, well, they did make Mario 64, so I guess I have to stay now. But at what point do we as a community put our foot down and say enough is enough? Just like with Kanye West, how many graduations do we have left? Or in this case, how many Mario Karts before we finally decide that we can't keep going down this rainbow road anymore? I'm gonna keep it a stack. This dilemma has been bothering me for a minute, and now since the Nintendo Switch 2 has come out and they have continued to implement the same disastrous conservative business practices without any hope for change, I have to vocalize my concerns. First, let me start with their online presence that has been very damaging to their reputation throughout the years because it has never really been functional. If we go way back to the beginning with the Wii, which was their first console that supported online functionality, it was a two-pack of ass in comparison to its competitors, like by a devastatingly large margin. It wasn't even close. But you know, it was okay because it was their first try at a console with online compatibility. And you know, I mean, their handheld devices had somewhat slightly better online services, even though they still weren't that great. They weren't really that great at all. I'm just gonna give them some sort of benefit of the doubt here. What Nintendo was missing though was a game chat and the ability to speak with your friends online through a mic, which would have enhanced the console's community exponentially. Why didn't they do that? I don't fucking know. It seems like that would have been a feature that could have been added to the Wii U, and it wouldn't have been such a massive failure. So you would assume that since this was a massive demand from the consumers, that Nintendo would eventually get it right, but it wasn't until the end of 2018 when they finally launched Nintendo Switch Online. 2 generations of consoles later, and still no voice chat. Well, I mean, there was, but it was unbearably useless because you had to link it to your smartphone, which was a hassle that nobody wanted to go through. And barely any of the games were even compatible with it anyways. And you know what their solution to that was? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. That's just how it was for the remainder of the console's lifespan. It wasn't until this year in the big 2025 when they thought it was finally a good idea to implement voice chat. On their terms, obviously. It's always on their terms because the superior Discord application that we all know and love, I know you love it, was replicated and washed down astronomically. Like, why couldn't they just cooperate with Discord and implement it into their list of features like their competitors do? You know, like, why not? Well, it's because this is Nintendo, and they always have to do things their own way. I don't know if it's because they have trust issues. I don't know if they're just, you know, very money hungry that they can't just split the proceeds at all. I don't know what their problem is. I truly don't. It's a mystery to us all. It is blasphemous. And it's not like Nintendo is known for stable online servers either, or has a vast palette when it comes to how online games should be played. It's very simplistic and underwhelming. You know, now I can't speak for the Nintendo Switch 2's online stability, but for the entire Switch's career, the system's servers were struggling immensely and suffering buffers and frame skips of dooms for its entire existence. Which is amazing considering that their games that did establish online connectivity seem to run on basic engines. You know, like 8-player Animal Crossing on one island seems like the bare minimum you could do for an online game. You know, and it wasn't like you could match sporadically with people around the world randomly. You had to have a friend code to even be able to invite them. Half a decade before this, Destiny came out on previous generation consoles where you could do raids in both PvE and PvP at the same time. You could go on the moon farming for helium fragments while randoms appear driving on their pimped out sparrows, and all Nintendo gets is a stuttering, bland open world Pokemon game with such low frame rates that it feels like you're flipping through an animation on a post-it notes. You can't even meet random players roaming around the Paldia region, which is honestly what die-hard Pokemon fans want. We want a fucking open world MMO Pokemon game that plays out just like the anime. Like, how badly that would shatter records? Like, it's so easy. It's so easy. The idea is right in front of them on a golden platter. I'd give up my left testicle just for it to be true. But instead, we get disappointment after disappointment, like Nintendo is all of our fathers, and we're waiting outside patiently with our suitcases hoping that he shows up after school like he promised, but he never does. And at some point it's like, when will we get a grip? Our father is an alcoholic. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm losing the plot. I know what you're probably thinking. Why is this grown man tripping over a console that is made for kids? Hey, newsflash, buddy. Statistically, majority of Nintendo's audience is over the age of 18 because one of the main psychological components that Nintendo operates on is nostalgia. We have all grown up with this company and have been entertained for decades, These iconic fictional figures have established roots in our core memories. While our parents were arguing about the recession in 2008, there we were, with the Wii in our hands, playing Super Smash Bros. Brawl. And it's not about the console, it's more about the principle. Because why has Nintendo not upgraded their graphical engine since like 2013? How is this even justifiable? Like, why do we just take it like good boys? Like, for example, it takes the length of an unskippable cutscene just to load into Animal Crossing, even on the new Switch? Like, why am I having to awkwardly look at my fat ass reflecting through the screen, waiting for a game to load up, contemplating if I should 456 myself? Why is Legend of Zelda Tears of a Kingdom an exact replica of Breath of the Wild with just a few different game mechanics? How is the first open world Pokemon game that we finally get even blander than a dish served at a UK breakfast? Like, oh my god, yes, finally the Nintendo Switch 2 has upgraded its graphics. Thank the gods. Nintendo enthusiasts can finally play games with graphics that are up to par with the PS4. And even that has shown to be unstable. And it's like, okay, I'm not here to shit entirely on the graphics, but for a game that came out years ago, Nintendo is going to sell it for $10 more than it would be on Steam, or even an old generation console where I'm sure you could pick up a pre-used copy for like $20 at GameStop. Hell, every 6 months there is a sale on Steam where you could get it for like $20. And you know what Nintendo is not going to do? You know what they're not going to do? Lower that game's price for like another 2 years. A game that will be out for 7 years at that point will reduce to $39.99. I've seen these gaming practices before. They've done it many times. They do not give a fuck about you or your pockets. Which brings up another major issue that we should address, and I believe was truly the nail in the coffin for me. The new Mario Kart costs $79.99, a $22 increase and a 33% increase on your average game. And what is the purpose of that? Well, let me tell you, friends, it's because Mario Kart has an open world feature that Forza has been doing since the Xbox One. That's why Nintendo has made the ultimate decision to run the pockets of every family member that is desperately trying to survive through this inflation. You got these little snot-nosed kids asking for a console in a game that costs about 1/3 of your rent or mortgage and like almost 1.5 times more than their previous consoles, all for what, a bigger screen and frame rates that should have been utilized in their systems since the failure of the Wii U? If I had a kid asking me for a Switch 2 while I was struggling to stay afloat financially, working overtime hours while my wife was at work late nights with her work husband, I am going to turn into Chris Benoit. They are making these prices the new standard for games, and honestly, I believe we as a collective should feel disrespected by this price increase. There are games currently out right now that are vastly superior to Nintendo games in terms of functionality and graphical enhancements that are a lot more reasonably priced. Examples of these are Claire Obscure Expedition 33, out for only $44.99. Hell, you could get Oblivion Remastered for only $49.99. These are definitely steals. I'm genuinely curious, are majority of Nintendo fans just submissive masochists that love getting raw dogged by Shuntaro Furukawa? It's just humorous to me. It's like I'm watching a comedy movie in full display right in front of my face. I'm expecting to see Will Ferrell pop out at one of these Nintendo Directs at any moment. I can't even comprehend it. We've seen this company literally shit in our mouths and we just swallow it like we're Bonnie Blue. Like, Nintendo does not fuck with us in the slightest. They are not willing to extend their arms out to us. They are cutthroat capitalists who would face fuck us in a second if it would guarantee them a couple of George Washingtons, or in this case, in Japan monetary terminology. I mean, come on now, they have been known to copyright their biggest supporters into the Yu-Gi-Oh! Shadow Realm. We've seen them implement strict guidelines that significantly restrict non-profit Super Smash Bros. Tournaments, requiring them to be small scale and non-commercial. Brother, the best Smash Bros. Game that has come out and that ones that people love to play is Melee, and that hoe is over 20 years old. Just give up that tight asshole of yours and let people live. Let people have fun. I mean, we've seen Nintendo decide to send abysmal copyright airstrikes on a YouTuber named Point Crow for playing a Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild mod, even though he was well in his legal right to upload these videos. They did not give a fuck. They almost Hiroshima'd his entire channel. There was a genuine gratification that I had when Power World released our game and immediately dominated Steam sales, because not only was it reasonably affordable, but it showcased an element that Nintendo has never been doing with their games since like Black and White, and that was actually give a shit. Now granted, it was a ripoff on certain Pokemon game mechanics, and one of those being a major mechanic that Nintendo actually patented back in 2021, which was throwing and catching creatures in a virtual space, which is insanely an egocentric and uncharitable thing to do if you truly think about it. This is second to when Warner Bros. Patented the Nemesis system to 2036 for Shadow of Mordor and then never utilized it again. They just put it on the shelf to accumulate cobwebs like a medieval dungeon. But nonetheless, it was cool to see a game like Power World just let their nuts hang like a stray pit bull on a hot summer day, even though they did have to alter some of the game features because Nintendo decided to put a lawsuit on these small developers. How gracious of Nintendo for doing that. It's like with every Nintendo launch, there is always a burst of optimism where everybody believes that this will be the console where Nintendo makes up for their mistakes. But they continue to disappoint, and for me, it has nothing to do with their console itself, but more of these conniving and greedy practices that they have continued to showcase time and time again. Now, regardless of what I say, Nintendo is still going to sell and maintain their position as one of the dominant powerhouses in the gaming industry, especially with the other releases that are coming out. That includes the new Donkey Kong game and the new From Software exclusive, the Dust Bloods, which a lot of people are earnestly anticipating. But I really have been building up this bitter indignation for Nintendo that's been kind of building up for a while now, and I just really needed to rant about it, hoping some other people could sympathize with my annoyance for a company that I once truly loved. Anyways, that's all for me. I'm off to another dimension. See ya.